The Democrats now have the smoking gun. Today, Michael Cohen wrote the first article of impeachment against President Trump in his testimony in the House of Representatives, the place where impeachment of a president begins. Democrats believe Michael Cohen gave them the smoking gun today. That's what Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna called this exhibit that Michael Cohen introduced in the historic all-day hearing in the House Committee on Oversight. This check made payable to Michael Cohen carries the now recognizable signature of Donald Trump and was signed by the president 6 months into his presidency. It marks the first time in American history that we have seen a check signed by a president for an illegal purpose.
As Exhibit 5A to my testimony shows, I am providing a copy of a $35,000 check that President Trump personally signed from his personal bank account on August 1st of 2017, when he was President of the United States, pursuant to the cover-up, which was the basis of my guilty plea, to reimburse me.
The crime, as described by federal prosecutors and in Michael Cohen's guilty plea testimony, took place weeks before the presidential election when Michael Cohen used his own funds to arrange a payment of $130,000 to Stormy Daniels to buy her silence. What America learned from Michael Cohen today is that that criminal scheme extended forward in time into the presidency of Donald Trump, because President Trump arranged a reimbursement schedule for Michael Cohen that included 11 checks delivered to him during the first year of the Trump presidency. Some of those checks were signed by President Trump. Some of them were signed by Donald Trump Jr. and by Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer of the Trump businesses. The smoking gun check, the one with Donald Trump's bold signature, will now take its place in popular culture. You will be seeing it in tweets forever. You will be seeing it on T-shirts. It will be imprinted on toilet paper, on coffee mugs, and it will take its place in history as the most important check Donald Trump has ever written, because it is the check that could end his presidency. And so the Trump loyalists in that hearing today had one job to do, and that was attack that check. Attack Michael Cohen's explanation of the crime that check is part of, and not one Republican member of the committee dared to do that. Not one of them went after that check. Not one Republican member of the committee tried to defuse that bomb for Donald Trump. They left the smoking gun untouched in their cross-examination of Michael Cohen, and instead of attacking the evidence, instead of attacking that check, they attacked Michael Cohen, and they used the words of the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York against Michael Cohen. That is the Office of Federal Prosecutors who got Michael Cohen's guilty plea. And today, it was as if those federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York were sitting right there on the Republican side of the hearing room as counsel to the Republican members of the committee, who put full faith and confidence in every word that they quoted from those federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York.
Take what the Southern District of New York said. Cohen did crimes that were marked by a pattern of deception and that permeated his professional life.
According to the Southern District of New York, you failed to disclose more than $20 million in liabilities.
Southern District of New York, in their statement, their sentencing memo, says this: Cohen's criminal violations in the federal election laws were also stirred, like others, crimes by his own ambition and greed. I ask unanimous consent to submit the sentencing memo from the Southern District of New York for the record.
And I ask your unanimous consent to read you the portions of the sentencing memo that the Republicans did not read today. During the campaign, Cohen played a central role in two similar schemes to purchase the rights to stories, each from women who claimed to have had an affair with individual one, so as to suppress the stories and thereby prevent them from influencing the election. And who was individual one?
Who are we referring to here when we refer to individual one?
Donald J. Trump.
That part of the sentencing memo that the Republicans did not read continues. With respect to both payments, Cohen acted with the intent to influence the 2016 presidential election. Cohen coordinated his actions with one or more members of the campaign, including through meetings and phone calls about the fact, nature, and timing of the payments in particular. And as Cohen himself has now admitted, with respect to both payments, he acted in coordination with and at the direction of individual one. And so the federal prosecutors in New York, who the Republicans repeatedly quoted today as if they were quoting the Bible, are the very same prosecutors who in the very same memo say that the President of the United States committed crimes with Michael Cohen and that those crimes were committed at the direction of Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the boss of the criminal enterprise described by the federal prosecutors who the Republicans quoted today, but were very careful to never quote the part where those same prosecutors accused the President of the United States of having committed crimes. The Republicans on the committee told America, you cannot believe Michael Cohen now because he is a convicted criminal, and one of his crimes was lying to Congress.
The guy who is going to prison in 2 months for lying to Congress.
Lying to Congress.
Lying to Congress.
Intricate, elaborate lies.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
I'll never forget the first convicted criminal who I saw testify to Congress. And he was guilty of crimes much worse than lying. He was a murderer. He was a made man in the mafia. I was a little boy in 1963 watching Joe Valachi testify to Congress about Italian organized crime in America on a black and white TV. And though we knew Joe Valachi was a criminal, a murderer, we also found him very believable. And I don't mean just the kids. The senators thought his testimony was believable and worth hearing. In testimony that I remember to this day, Joe Valachi described to the Senate and America watching on TV the initiation ritual for the criminal organization that we learned that day was called the Cosa Nostra by its made members. The ceremony was in Italian, and the new member had to take a piece of paper and burn it in his hands, and I'll never forget the way Joe Valachi said the word burned. In his New York accent, it became boined.
Demonstrate just what you did.
In other words, now this piece of paper, piece of paper is burnt.
Paper's burned. Yeah.
And then in your hand you say, well, again they give you words in Italian, but I know what it meant.
In other words, while you were repeating the words, you were burning the paper.
Right, this is the way I burn if I expose this organization. Then he picks your finger.
Who?
The Godfather.
He picks your finger?
He picks your finger with a needle. Makes a little blood come out. In other words, that's to express the blood relation. It's supposed to be like brothers.
And the Senate and America believed every word. 6 years later, Mario Puzo published his mafia novel, The Godfather. And 3 years after that, there were long lines in front of movie theaters all over the country for audiences eager to see Marlon Brando playing The Godfather. And America has known since then, and probably before, that the most hardened criminals in the world lie, cheat, steal, and murder, but sometimes, some of them tell the truth. And when criminals like Joe Valachi tell the truth, their criminal friends turn on them and call them a rat, which is what Donald Trump now calls his former friend, Michael Cohen. Leading off our discussion now, Mimi Roker, former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal contributor, Tim O'Brien, executive editor of Bloomberg Opinion on MSNBC contributor. He has reported on Donald Trump for decades and, of course, was sued by Donald Trump and won. And we are joined by MSNBC contributor and friend of Michael Cohen, Donnie Deutsch, the man who told me many, many months ago that this day was coming. And Donnie, when you told me that in that short but powerful conversation in that hallway, I thought, when the day comes, I need Donnie on the show as the first guest. Tell us what you saw in that hearing room today with your friend Michael Cohen.
Well, the day hasn't come yet. Because this is a open.
There's
act.
more.
This is an open act. The day that you'll have me back on
is when the Southern District RICOs the Trump Organization. That's the Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organization Act, which is introduced when people sit atop a criminal organization, where basically they will go after everything this criminal organization has done, from the charities to the Trump to the money laundering, to bank fraud, to wire fraud, to insurance fraud, and they'll take the empire apart. They'll take buildings away. That's when I'll come back on the show, because that's the closing act. This and Mueller will be the opening act. And what you saw today, and I still think Russia is going to be a sidebar to this, is a peek inside this criminal enterprise. You saw the little pieces coming into place. You saw the word insurance come up for the first time. You saw him mentioning the children in different ways. You saw obviously the campaign violation, but that's not where this ends. This ends where if you live in New York City, I ran a big advertising agency for years, and there are bankers, and there are lawyers, and there are real estate developers. What everybody knows about Donald Trump and this organization, it is the slimiest of the slime. It is just the way they do business. It is dishonest. It is unethical. It is criminal. And the Southern District will take it apart. So what Michael Cohen did today that I knew was coming, I knew a lot of things that Michael knew, but I also know a lot of things about the way the Trumps do business. This is the opening act.
Mimi Rocha, your old shop, the Southern District of New York, kept coming up in every Republican question, but they left out. They left out the part where those same prosecutors said Donald Trump directed these crimes.
Exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. What they wanted to do is paint Cohen as a liar, which isn't really surprising, since the first thing Cohen did was admitted he's a liar. He's lied on behalf of Trump, and that's the part that they wanted to just, ignore, right? Because if you believe Cohen's testimony today, it's very, very damaging for Trump. And so that's why, instead of, as you said, going after the facts and trying to counter some of the actual assertions he made about what Trump did, like direct him, in essence, to lie, although he was careful not to overstate it, help concoct this scheme of silencing women and then reimbursing through this essentially a fraud scheme. If you believe all of that, that's very damaging for Trump. And so the only thing they can do is to attack him as opposed to going after the facts. Because to leave it unattacked, to leave his credibility intact, is just devastating for Trump.
And Tim, Alan Weisselberg came up. He suddenly started to become a featured player in the hearing because people kept saying, well, who else can we go to for more information about whether it would be insurance fraud possibilities or other issues? And that name, Alan Weisselberg, kept coming up, and we now are hearing from the committee that he may be one of the next witnesses that they call.
Right, along with Matthew Calamari and Rona Graff, all of these names that people didn't know before, but who've been sitting in the Trump Organization for decades. Trump chews through people pretty quickly, but there's this core group of people who've been with him for a long time. They're not terribly sophisticated, but they buy into the cult of personality around Trump. They don't argue with him, and they do what they're told. Alan Weisselberg specifically joined the Trump Organization at the same time Donald did in the 1970s. He was Fred Trump's accountant. He's handled Donald Trump's personal income tax returns. He signs off on every major deal the Trump Organization does. Michael Cohen's only been there since 2006. He's got a window onto some things, but Trump used him as sort of a pit bull. Alan Weisselberg has deep institutional knowledge. So to what Donnie was saying about, when the Southern District decides to pounce and start to take apart some of the pieces of what Trump's doing, particularly, I think, around issues like money laundering. Right. Alan Weisselberg is going to be a cog in the middle of that because he authentically knows where all the bodies are buried.
And you're not going to have to go through Enron, and Tim will know this. If you've been up to the Trump Organization, it's a dusty office with a bunch of, here's Donald, here's the three kids, here's the CFO.
Stuck in the
you go back to Valachi, and if you went to one of those, little, coffee bars. Right. So you don't have to pick through a lot of layers. It is a mom and pop licensing company. So it is, and it was run that way. And as you see Donald Trump, see the way he conducts himself as president, just in front of everybody, beyond the law. Imagine as a private citizen when nobody's watching. Imagine in the real estate business, which is a pretty slimy business, even if you're a straight shooter to begin with. Imagine the antics that he was up to. Well, we're not going to have to imagine. So I thank you for those nice things you said, but I want to extend a future invitation to myself. When the
permanent invitation.
Okay.
Maybe Donnie tells us more. Certainly, to say this is going to end up in a RICO prosecution. And my experience with Donnie on this subject is he doesn't exaggerate anything. Everything is as solid as you could ask it to be. How would we get from here to a RICO prosecution?
Well, it's not crazy. I will say that. In this sense, look, RICO, there's very technical requirements, but it is.
And Donnie didn't go to law school, so you can correct him.
I barely got it. I did go to Wharton with Donald Trump. That's right.
Interesting. But what RICO is meant to capture is when you have all sorts of different kinds of criminal activity being committed on behalf of one centralized person and organization, and it's kind of it's exactly what you think of. It's almost like a spider web, and all the different spiders are in it, and they're all doing different kinds of crimes, and it's to capture it all together, because to charge any one single crime alone doesn't capture the essence of the organization. So that's why I say, as you're right, the more different kinds of crimes we hear, insurance fraud, bank fraud, tax fraud, you need crimes that are considered predicates, like specified under the statute that you can use in RICO. But I do see, the idea that if the Trump organization is being used as a vehicle to commit many different crimes of state and federal crimes, it can capture state crimes and become federal under RICO as well. Then, that's when RICO becomes useful.
Which brings us to one of the scariest questions and answers that the Trump organization and President Trump had to experience today, and that is when Michael Cohen was asked if there are any other illegal acts that he's aware of that he hasn't mentioned today. Let's watch this moment.
Is there any other wrongdoing or illegal act that you are aware of regarding Donald Trump that we haven't yet discussed today?
Yes, and again, those are part of the investigation that's currently being looked at by the Southern District of New York.
That was one of my jump out of the seat moments, Tim.
Well, following up on what Mimi said is, I think in addition, one of the atmospheric things about RICO is that there's someone at the head of the web, or in the center of the web, orchestrating this. And this has come out. It came out today. At one point, Michael Cohen was asked, "So are you saying that Donald Trump orchestrated a criminal fraud with Donald Trump Jr. and Alan Weisselberg?" Yes. Or you had this moment, are there other frauds that we don't know about, or other crimes that were committed? Yes. Of course that's going to make Donald Trump jump out of his socks. And he's in Hanoi. He just got epically trolled by Michael Cohen, thousands of miles away. He did to Trump what Trump has done to everyone else. He has damning testimony. He's insulted him personally, and Trump's in a box halfway around the world and can't do anything about it. The next leg of this, I think, is people inside the Trump organization are going to start to have to decide, do they take care of themselves? Do they take care of Trump? Or do they try to find a middle ground? I don't think they're going to ultimately be able to have a middle ground.
Mimi, how does that work?
Yeah, no,
it sounds like Alan Weisselberg, for one, has already made a decision about that. He reportedly has an immunity agreement with the Southern District.
I want to be careful there, because I think that I don't know for sure, but just based on the reporting that we're gleaning, maybe you have more specifics. I think his immunity was pretty limited. Mm-hmm. So there's cooperation agreements, and then there's immunity agreements. Cooperation agreements are, you tell us everything about everything. Immunity is, we're going to bring you in on this one day to the grand jury.
Which was August of last year.
And you're going to answer questions, and that's it. And so that can be very limited. So I think Alan Weisselberg still has that decision to make that we're talking about. Is he going to get on board and cooperate, which it sounds like he should, or he is in some serious legal jeopardy himself?
Donnie, talk about the man we saw today in that committee room. I mean, you over the months have tried to tell me that Michael Cohen is actually a nice guy in certain ways. I didn't want to hear it. I focus on what he has done and what he's participated in. But I saw the man today. You couldn't miss him. We were exposed to him for hours on end. We saw him cry. We saw him talk about the pain this has caused his family in very convincing ways. There's no one who can doubt that part of it. We saw him stay composed, never fall for the bait that the Republicans were trying to get him to fall for, never getting angry, never giving more of an answer than was necessary, and being, as solid a witness in terms of performance, as you can see in those kinds of hearings. What did you see in that range of emotion, in the range of what you saw him go through? I'm particularly interested in what you felt, what you thought when you saw him address Donald Trump directly into that camera.
I saw what I've been seeing over the last couple of years, and what the public has seen is basically the old clips. And,
yeah,
you know, that's
all I know.
And look, Michael Cohen was Trump's kind of thuggy lawyer and did dishonest things. And his explanation, which is the real explanation, if you know Michael personally, if you know Donald personally, he was in the glove. He went from being a taxi cab attorney to Trump's attorney, and on his lapel pin, and that's intoxicating. And he's described it as a cult. That doesn't excuse, but it explains a lot of his behavior. What I saw a guy over the last couple of years is a guy who knows he did wrong things and says, wait a second. I'm the guy taking the look what's happening in the world here. The very thing that our heads almost explode about every night. Imagine if you are becoming aware of that, you realize you were part of it, you were a piece of it, you're paying the consequences while the other guy is, circling in Air Force One. So, and I saw a guy who would break down every time we talk about his family. I saw a guy, look, if this hadn't happened, would he have gotten to this place? Probably not, but it did happen. And he is in this place, and it's genuine, it's real, and the camera does not lie. His life is destroyed. He is a family. When a congressman, I can't remember his name, put out that thing the other day about his wife potentially, that is we're not even going to dignify, I've already gone through that, but to see the effect on this man, I was on the phone with him the night Trump went after his father-in-law. And that's when he said, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. He's a family guy. He's a lawyer. He is a good man that did some stupid, bad things. And I would not talk the way I talk about him. I'm a pretty cynical guy, and I'm a street guy. I know people. I've known guys like this my entire life. As I said, is he a choir boy? No. Is he going to jail? Does he deserve to go to jail for what he did? Yes. But he's a good man.
Donnie Deutsch is not someone who can be fooled about people. He understands the complexity of people and that they can come with many shades. Donnie, you doing Morning Joe tomorrow?
I am.
Thank you very much for staying up late for us tonight.
And really
appreciate it. Couldn't get through this hour without you. Mimi Rocha, thank you for joining us. Tim O'Brien, really appreciate it. We needed you here tonight more than ever. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.